we have Kate Bren, who is a performance consultant at Cyclone Energy Group. She analyzes energy use efficiency and renewable energy, explores workflow improvements, and crafts compelling graphics to complement the firm's work. Kate's an engineer in training and Living Future accredited professional and two-time ABIPSA Project Stasio winner based in Austin, Texas.
Hello. Yeah? Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Bren. When I first started my career, like just a few years ago, sustainability to me was interpreted to mean electricity, and that gas is bad and that we should move away from gas as fast as possible and at all costs. Now that I'm a few years into my career, there are a lot of different metrics that we get from various places in the industry, and so I want to talk about how those metrics relate to this conversation on gas versus electricity. All right, so here are a few different ways that we can think about sustainability. So carbon is pretty popular from the perspectives of MEP 2040 and AIA 2030. Those metrics are wanting to achieve net zero carbon costs. Does it make sense for us to upgrade from equipment A to equipment B from an operational cost standpoint? Efficiency, we see this one a lot in passing energy code and also LEED. So can the building use less energy on an annual basis? Longevity, we've got some cockroaches because apparently they're going to outlive us in the apocalypse. And so when we think about longevity, we're thinking about equipment duration and maintenance. And then lastly, forward thinking. So what does the future have in store for us, and how are we innovating to get there? Okay, so first looking at a macro scale, so the electricity grid. On the farthest left, we see New York. So New York's electricity grid is made up of majorly hydropower and nuclear, and it's actually the cleanest grid in the United States. So at only 275 pounds of carbon per megawatt hour. And interestingly, that's the only electric grid in the United States that is actually cleaner than gas currently. So that means that per unit of energy created, New York's electricity is cleaner than the same unit of energy of gas, but that no other state has that same, meets that same bar. Texas and Chicago are pretty average for the nation in terms of their carbon emissions per unit of energy created. Texas, I don't think about it as being really progressive, but I'm from Texas, have a lot of solar and wind. Chicago and Colorado both have a lot of coal that drag down its emissions rates. Okay, so if New York is the only state that emits less carbon per unit of energy than gas when it generates electricity, how do other states compare? So Texas, New York, California, Pacific Northwest, a lot of places are getting sort of close, but so each of these states are currently generating a lot more carbon emissions per unit of electricity than gas. Another way we can think about gas versus electricity is just in cost. So if we're just looking at costs in Texas of electricity, it's 2 times more expensive than gas. But in Vermont, it's about 6 times more expensive. However, when we start to look at efficiency, we actually see that electricity starts to beat out gas. So if we're just looking at the per unit of energy basis, gas is both cheaper and has fewer carbon emissions nationwide. But because electric equipment has the capacity to be a lot more efficient than gas equipment, we actually see that it tends to beat gas in energy usage, cost, and carbon. Another metric we can look at is longevity. So HVAC equipment on the left here, I'll talk about those first. Okay, so if we're looking at lifespan, the electric systems are not lasting as long as gas systems, and they're also more expensive to maintain. But if we're looking at water heaters, for example, the electric systems are lasting longer and are cheaper to maintain. Another way we can think about longevity is impact on human beings. So energy that is more renewable is also less likely to kill human beings in its generation. And these mortality rates, we're looking at accidents that occur because of the energy creation, and then also resultant deaths from air pollution, for example. And lastly, where are we going? So in most states right now, the electricity emits more carbon than gas, but that will not be true very soon. So this is a map from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory from this last year. And so we can see that most electricity grids will be significantly cleaner than gas within the next decade. All right, wrapping up, if we're just looking at electricity versus gas on a per unit of energy basis, gas is both cheaper and less carbon intensive. However, because electric equipment is typically more efficient than gas equipment, we can actually see it beat gas equipment in terms of cost and carbon. If we're looking at longevity, gas HVAC systems are currently last longer and are cheaper to maintain than electric systems, but the opposite could be said for water heaters. So electric water heaters are lasting longer and are cheaper to maintain. And then lastly, if we're looking at the electric grid, even though electricity is not as clean as gas right now, we expect it will be within the next 10 years for most states. All right, questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
I have two questions with regard to electricity. One of them is the majority of it coming from nuclear or dams? And do we consider the environmental cost of damming rivers all over the place? And the second question is, how prudent is it to focus all of our energy into a single source?
Ooh, okay. I want to answer your first question, but I do want to hear more about what you mean for your second one. So when we're looking at just human life, for example, in terms of hydro, it's not very deadly. And you can actually see here that like global hydro versus US, global is a lot more, has significant number more deaths than the United States does.
I'm not considering deaths. I'm considering environmentally stopping filtering a river entirely in order to capture its energy so that no life forms that exist in that river are able to pass through that dam.
Yeah, I think that's a super fair question. I'm not sure I have data to support that, and I'm not totally sure what metric we would utilize to kind of investigate that. But I think that's an interesting point to bring up. Totally.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I'm Andrea. I work for ILFI. We oversee the Living Building Challenge. And I think when you're just looking at carbon, this is a big part of what Kate's highlighting. But a lot of the sustainability certification schemes do not consider large-scale hydro to be renewable energy. It's a different category because of a lot of the issues that you're pointing to.
Should have mentioned earlier that Kate's style of presentation is a Pechacucha style. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a very rapid-paced delivery. I believe 30-second slides typically is the goal there, in like a 6 to 8 minute total presentation. Lee's up next.
For the Chicago electricity makeup, is that based on the PJM region versus Illinois?
It is, yes. It's the PJM region for, oh, and I have a typo actually, PMJ. That's.
Any other last questions here as we wrap up this first module? Thank you so much, Kate. Appreciate it.
Thank you.